This piece is an extension of a chapter in Ameena Gafoor's Aftermath of Empire, the novels of Roy Heath. The chapter analyzes two novels, designated Heath's novels of independence, namely A Man Come Home and The Murderer. This script concerns itself only with A Man Come Home, Heath's first novel to be published in 1974. The themes invoked by Roy Heath are echoed by Martin Carter. As we contemplate the fruits of half a century of independence and look towards a future likely to be scripted by oil prices and oil companies, these themes have enduring, perhaps even heightened relevance. Passages and sentences from Mrs. Gafoor's chapter have been edited and extracts have been amplified.
The living is a passing traveler. The dead, a man come home.
They call here magnificent province, province of mud, province of flood, plantation, feudal coast. Who are the magnificent here? Not I with this torn shirt, but they in their white mansions by the trench of blood. I tell you, this is no magnificent province, no El Dorado for me, no streets paved with gold, but a bruising and a battering for self-preservation in the white dust and the gray mud. I tell you, and I tell you no secret, now is long past time for worship, long past time for kneeling with clasped hands at the altars of poverty. How are the mighty slain? By this hammer of my hand, by this anger in my life, by this new science of men alive everywhere in this province. Thus are the mighty slain. Not I with this torn shirt from Martin Carter, that's around 1951.
Literary criticism has so far failed to grasp Heath's essential thrust in the Guyanese novel. A Man Come Home and The Murderer are novels of independence. Both examine the viability of independence through the disorder created by the collapse of empire and the failure of the promise contained in the notion of independence. The texts cover similar ground to V.S. Naipaul's novel In a Free State, which examines the implications of freedom in an African state and the resulting chaos when the old order is shattered at independence and the free man is led only by his own passions and instincts. Heath's novels depict a people mired on the threshold of a new order that is yet to evolve. What Elsa Gavaya describes as the white-black scale of dependence in colonial societies impose a stable and predictable order, however unjust that order might have been. The constitutional and legal dismantling of that scale left the individual and the society in a void, trapped in postures and mental attitudes of the old order. This reading examines the experiences of characters and their social relationships on the threshold of independence, and how they negotiate the void in their quest for individual freedom. Heath relied on the institution of the family to structure his novels and to illustrate the symbiotic relationship between the lived lives of ordinary people and the formal structure of society. These two novels of independence recreate the euphoria that suffused the nation momentarily in expectation of the possibilities promised by native leaders, as well as the tragic efforts to transcend the deep psychological scars inflicted on the psyche by slavery and the brutal plantation system, indentureship, and colonialism. In A Man Come Home, Egbert Foster was still a little boy when
his father had promised him that the country would one day be free.
and thus he has
Waited half a lifetime in anticipation.
of this auspicious moment to celebrate his status as a free man. The novel begins.
Egbert Foster has just raised the Guyana flag over the porch of his house. He has told no one how he came by the banner with its golden arrow design, nor how much he paid for it. But he was to declare he had waited 40 years for the occasion since that day when, as a little boy, his father had told him that the country would be free and its flag would flutter above his own house. Foster's dog sat under the flag, scratching itself languidly as the afternoon light faded. I like it, man. I like it. Is what? Foster's neighbor asked from the other side of the fence. How you mean is what? Is the flag. We flag? The country flag? The neighbor asked again. Yes, yes, you ignorant bad, you know. All my children and grandchildren know this flag. It's nice though, is where you get it, the neighbor said by way of atonement for his ignorance. No, that's a question I'm not telling nobody, at least not yet. Please yourself, the neighbor retorted and started to turn away. But as he put his foot on the lowest step, he stopped, reflected, then asked, You didn't see that no good wife of mine? No, Foster replied. All right, see you. Right, Foster answers laconically. He remained on the porch to contemplate his new flag and after a while looked around him to see if anyone was watching. He then pulled down the flag and hoisted it once more, very slowly. You coming in to eat? Christine, his mistress, called out. He secured the cord of the flagpole and went inside.
The opening paragraph closes with anticlimax.
Foster's dog sat under the flag, scratching itself languidly as the afternoon light faded.
An image that is absurdly unequal to the historic occasion and mocks the high note of optimism established in the opening line. The work examines the vacuum created by the granting of independence. The flawed human relationships mirror a society whose collective psychic failure is rooted in the conventional morality of the mother country. The borrowed images that persist and subvert the process of the new nation. Heath's portrayal of a fundamentally flawed independence is deepened by the picture of poverty sustained by Clive Thomas in The Poor and the Powerless, a work that charts the trail of poverty left by colonialism and proposes structural reform of the economy for self-sustaining growth. As Thomas wrote in 1981, since the days of Columbus, the region has been colonized by the European powers and, more recently, has fallen under the domination and sway of the United States. Thus, powerlessness has to be conceived at both the national level and at the internal, social, or class level, where some groups and classes are better placed than others. The novel deepens the picture of social misery articulated by Martin Carter in 1953 when British Guyana made its first attempt at self-government, but had its constitution suspended by Britain.
Is the University of Hunger, the wide waste. Is the pilgrimage of man the long march? The print of hunger wanders in the land. The green tree bends above the long forgotten. The plains of life rise up and fall in spasms. The roofs of men are fused in misery. They come treading in the hoof marks of the mule, passing the ancient bridge, the grave of pride, the sudden flight, the terror and the time. They come from the distant village of the flood, passing from the middle air to the middle earth, in the common hours of nakedness. Twin bars of hunger mark their metal brows. Twin seasons mock them, parching drought and flood. Is the dark ones, the half sunken in the land, is they who had no voice in the emptiness, in the unbelievable, in the shadowless. They come treading on the mud floor of the year, mingling with the dark, heavy water, and the sea song of the eyeless flitting bat. Oh, long is the march of men, and long is the life, and wide is the span.
A Man Come Home appeared in 1974, the same year Carter addressed the 8th convocation ceremony at the University of Guyana and complained of a thwarted process that subverts society's quest for identity.
Something seems to have gone awry with that process of metamorphosis, which, if we are to accept what our leaders tell us, should transform us from what we function as, an aggregation of begging, tricking, bluffing, cheating, subsistence seekers and assorted hustlers, into a free community of valid persons, each of whom has existed in a way we have come to conceptualize as, at least one among other, higher modes of being, where the essence of staying alive means fulfillment of self and self-realization, which, when achieved, ceases to remain merely the accomplishment of a competence, but goes onward to the acquisition of the status of a function of the personality, a function which consummates itself in the enrichment of every self that participates with it in the creation of a free community of valid persons.
It is as if the two writers are speaking to each other. Heath with his ironic novel of independence, and Carter questioning whether the granting of political freedom is matched by the psychic transformation necessary for a cliched society of predators and victims to become a free community of valid persons. Through one of his chapters in A Man Come Home, Heath too questions whether a society newly emerging from colonialism can advance to freedom upon a defective morality and flawed self-image of the people.
Guy had recently painted his room. In addition, he had given Muriel money to buy a Frigidaire, a new electric iron, and every little convenience a woman might need in the home. At first, when questioned by her as to the source of the money, he claimed that his wages had increased. Later, however, he admitted that most of the money had come from Foster, who was being in turn supported by Bird. "And Bird don't know he gave you it?" she asked. "He won't tell Bird," he declared confidentially. "How you so sure?" she asked. "What you can tell Bird for? You didn't want Bird to get vexed with you." "Anyway," Muriel said, "what I complaining about? If he's so stupid as to give you money for nothing, I ain't not gonna complain." She had just washed her hair and was now waving her new hair dye from side to side over her head. The machine made such a noise that Guy had to shout to be heard. Their conversation resembled a mosaic of contrasting patterns in which unrelated subjects succeeded one another. I know this chap who's selling these boat pills, G said. Pills? You're not using no pills for me, Muriel declared emphatically. Why? He asked, without attempting to conceal his disappointment. Why they can't make a pill for a man to take? She asked. You can't, he began, shaking his head in such a way as to make it clear that what he was saying was self-evident. You can't give a man a pill, 'cause he don't got the same organs like a woman. How you mean we don't got same organs? You don't got a heart and liver and guts? She asked mockingly. You know what I mean. Nobody gonna put nothing in me and nobody gonna make me swallow nothing, she said forcibly. All right, I know it backwards, he said. He watched Muriel's massive arms swing gently as she moved the dryer, now to the right, now to the left. They talked, skipping from subject to subject, until Muriel stopped listening and got tangled in the strands of her own reflections. There were times when she wished that G was a butcher so that he could bring home meat instead of bread. Meat could be sold, but no one would give you anything for bread. What did not come from the baker was judged to be stale. Her neighbor's child had that healthy, smooth appearance of the meat eater. In addition to the scraps his father was given, he managed to steal chunks of beef when his employer went home and left him in charge of the stall. The whole yard knew what he was up to, and though they envied him, did not begrudge him his good luck. These men are so soft-headed, she reflected. When people with money thief and build big house with the money, nobody can touch them. But when poor people thief a pound of beef, people throw their hands up in the air and shout for them to go to prison. If Guy had taken her advice, he would have stolen everything he could lay his hands on in the baker shop, and the oven would have been left only because it could not be dismantled.
A Man Come Home depicts two generations of the Foster family. The novel can be said to have a double plot. The first is built around Foster, his younger and attractive common law wife Christine, and their adolescent daughter Melda, all of whom live on Princess Street. Heath grew up on Drysdale Street, a stone's throw from the Coker at Princess and Lombard Streets. It recounts Foster's efforts, or lack thereof, to salvage his life from poverty and dependency in fulfillment of the promise of independence. The high point of Foster's purposeless days is to leave his home ritually at 4 o'clock every afternoon to communicate with friends at the barber shop. The second plot centers on Bird, Foster's son by his first marriage, a dreamer to whom work is anathema.
The sight of labor revolted him.
Bird lives with his girlfriend Stephanie, not far off in a tenement yard on Broad Street.
Foster's second son, Archie, lived in a range yard on Broad Street. Though christened Archie, he was known as Bird by his acquaintances. Bird had never worked, except for a spell of 4 months when he had lapsed into a burst of activity, a period he disliked recalling. On Saturdays, he ate at his father's table. On Sundays, either at Ada's, his half-sister, or at one of his brothers or half-brothers' homes. He liked to be independent, he claimed, and did not want to spoil Ada by eating at her table every Sunday. Women were wrong-headed, especially the women in his family. Bird's mistress Stephanie was devoted to him, but occasionally left him rather as a reminder that he did not own her than because she was disenchanted with life at Bird's side. When he was in hospital, she took him a half pint of milk every day. The woman in whose house she worked as a servant suspected that there was water in her milk, but rather than lose Stephanie, pretended she did not know. As soon as Bird left hospital, her employer's milk gained its yellow hue and creamy consistency. Stephanie caught her hand, as the saying goes, at nights by painting flower patterns on window blinds and selling them. Through her present employer, she had widened her clientele so much so that she was able to give Bird $2 a week, which he spent on two films, one on Sunday night after his afternoon at Adder's, and the other on Wednesday 2:30 afternoon show after he had read the newspaper in the barber shop.
Another of Foster's 5 sons, Benji, has fled the colonial stagnation and lives in Canada. Benji supplements Foster's meager income with periodic remittances, of which Foster lives in constant anticipation. Benji's supposed success in Canada awakens unrestrained jealousy in Bird. The crisis in the novel is sparked off by news that Benji has acquired a house in Canada. News that disturbs Foster, since the monthly remittances will cease, but not as much as it rankles deep within the shiftless Bird and sets off a train of events that change his life irrevocably. The character G links the families of Foster and Bird. G lives with his wife Muriel in the squalor of a Bent Street range yard, quite close to the city jail, in a one-room enclosure. Through G's consciousness is filtered a dismal portrait of a new and hopeful nation, left to work out its self-sufficiency from a position of pennilessness and utter hopelessness.
You know how she beat up poor Melda, Foster said. Why? 'Cause the girl laugh. You ever hear anything like that? Darling, his deceased wife, must be turning in her grave to see the trouble I got. Sometimes I think it's better for me to row Christine in a boat right out to sea and then smash a hole in it. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or the next week with this woman. I feel like if I live in upon some volcano. You want some rum? G asked Foster, who he felt was now completely in his hands. The older man nodded, a far-away look in his eyes. Go get me a bottle of rum, a biggie, told Muriel, injecting a note of authority in his voice.
A little later,
You gonna take me home? You're not gonna leave me here, Foster pleaded. The houses appeared to him in blur patterns, and he had great difficulty in staying upright. You're just like your son, Guy said. You can't hold your liquor. All right. Take it easy. Soft and greasy. It isn't far. Ain't far? In my condition, is miles away, Foster protested. You don't want to read it tomorrow paper that somebody fished me out a corpse from the trench, all bloated and grey. The two companions set out along Bent Street and turned left into Camp Street by the jail. When they arrived in front of his house, Foster did not wish to let go Guy. Come inside and make it up to the wife, man. Come in, huh? Look. You see, there's light in the drawing room. She up. She ain't gone to bed. Guy refused, promised that he would come another time. If you don't come in, I gon' cough you down right here, Foster said, adopting a threatening posture with his hands raised and his head down. Guy laughed. Foster took a swing at him, missed, and fell to the ground. You better get up quick before she see you, Guy said, helping him up. You hit a friend, Foster in tone, wobbling from side to side, even though he was holding on to Guy's shoulder. Forget all them things I tell you, Foster said. You ain't no friend of mine. He turned into the yard and staggered up the stairs, holding on to the banister. He turned and made for home, walking as steadily as if he had not had a drop of liquor. What else can a man do but drink? Mused Guy. What kind of asshole world is this, eh? Rain, liquor, or the hot sun breathing down upon your head, eating your blood up. I could go on to Canada and make money over there. Everything you resign at my balls is worrying about keeping your job. If New Year go and get child, that would be the end. Could be the beginning. He laughed softly. The beginning, he repeated. He passed the jail without looking up, his boots making a dull noise on the road. No one was about. The sound of an untuned piano came from a house he was passing. He was overwhelmed with bitterness at his wasted life. Once inside, he made up his mind to finish the bottle of rum alone. One by one, the lights in the yard went out, and the occasional voices fell silent.
Benji's reported success shocks Bird into recognition of his own dysfunction. The flow of Bird's reflections mirrors his flawed perceptions of social mobility and selfhood.
You hear from Benji yet? Ada asked Melda. Benji was Foster's son in Canada. No, Melda replied. Well, I hear he buy house, Ada said. What? Bud asked, genuinely amazed. So I hear, Ada retorted. I didn't know he got money, Bud declared. Benji, his elder brother, had not done as well as he had at school, and no single incident nor remark had ever brought home so forcefully the fact that he, Bird, had wasted his life. Ada's disclosure ruined his day, spoiled his appetite, and reduced him to silence. Look, he said, standing up as he spoke, I forgot I had to go somewhere. But you didn't eat nothing, Ada remarked, an astonished expression on her face. I got to go, he insisted, and hurried out of the room to everyone's disappointment. When he reached the Penitence Road, he turned left and then right on arriving at the outskirts of Georgetown. He sat down by the river and thought over the bit of news he had just heard. Benji rich? Benji of all people? If Benji had got rich, anybody could make money. Suppose he took it into his head to come back to Guyana. He would see him floundering without a suit of clothes or a cent in the bank. The only traffic on the river were a launch on its way from Port Royal and the barge being rowed down the river by a single oarsman. His body glistened in the afternoon sun in fleeting explosion as he heaved the oars through the water. The sight of such labor revolted Bird. There was a shortcut to the acquisition of wealth, and he would have to find it.
There is a connective thread running deep between Bird and G, who have shared a life of abject poverty since boyhood. Barely schooled, Bird and G both
Left school at the age of 12, Guy to deliver bread on the carrier bicycle, and Bird to devote his time to a life of sloth.
these friends gravitate to the vicarious pleasures of rum and sex, with an eye to the quick fix solution to easy wealth. A young generation is deemed to be the future of a nation, but Bird's band of youths is stagnated, with no capacity to contribute to nation building. They have lost their way in this tale, still trapped in postures of dependency and lacking the self-knowledge necessary for achieving selfhood. In this context, Bird's urgent desire for material possessions as a measure of freedom and success, and his dependence upon the fantasy of a mythical water maid for escape from an embarrassingly crippling poverty become understandable. Bird seeks the solitude of the riverbank to contemplate his plight and to be in communion with the mysterious and feared water maid, a jealous woman trapped in the body of a sea creature who gains a central place in the plot. Myth and folklore are powerful shaping influences on the human psyche. Bird's version is built on the notion that the water maid, with her legendary powers, is the agent of the newly found wealth he exhibits after long and unexplained absences from his range-yard home. Expensive clothes, gold jewelry, a new motor car, and a large house on residential Brickdam, the scene of lavish parties. He considers himself married to this magical river fantasy and wears round his neck a symbol of his betrothal.
A gold chain from which hung what appeared to be a nugget, which, on closer examination, was seen to be a representation of a skull with deeply gouged out eye sockets.
Caught in a trap between the belief of a mythical wife and the reality of daily existence with a real woman, Bird becomes a divided and tormented man. Crisis develops when he defies the myth and proceeds to marry Stephanie for fear of losing her, at a wedding that only a few guests are courageous enough to attend.
The little church was practically empty, the wedding reception a dismal affair.
An indication that, by and large, society's response to myth is instinctively one of incomprehension and fear. Foster's self-esteem has been severely compromised, ironically, by social progress. The pure water supply scheme has made his skills in vat making and vat repairing redundant. Foster is left not only without income, but emotionally choked with,
A lump in his throat.
when reminiscing with friends and reliving the pride he once felt in his work. As a lampshade maker, his creative spirit derives no fulfillment.
His heart was not in it. It lacked the warmth and poetry of wood.
Foster's prospects of financial independence become more remote with the advent of the nation's independence. Foster's fragile thoughts and feelings about self and self-fulfillment are complicated by his relationships in the home with his wife and his daughter, relationships which he can scarcely manage and which emphasize his ineffectualness in the sterile society. Foster's apathy is palpably brought home when his daughter announces a date with a sexual predator at the workplace.
You don't like the job? Foster asked Melda. No, but I can't do nothing else. And what your school friends are doing? Selling, most of them, Melda replied. This man, he nice? Foster asked her. I don't know. It's the first time he going out with me. He go out with three of the girls already. Now it's my turn. What you mean? Foster began. What's wrong? Melda asked, her mouth falling open. He hesitated, then said, I didn't say nothing wrong. Foster lifted the last thoughtful of his food to his mouth with less relish than the others.
Unprepared for his daughter's emotional growth and burgeoning sexuality, even though clearly aware of the perniciousness of the society, Foster barely manages a feeble response
I hope you know what you're doing.
and fails to take a firm hand to prevent the sexual exploitation of his daughter. On the other hand, the unexpected happens in the mother daughter relationship within this fictional family. Christine, initially elated that her daughter is able to attract a man, is shattered at her daughter's sneering announcement that she is expecting a baby. Apart from the social stigma an illegitimate child brings, it will strain their finances. In a fit of uncontrolled anger, Christine brutalizes Melda, causing her to suffer a miscarriage and a nervous collapse. The post independent society is heir to a culture of violence that has been internalized across the society.
If only Melda had not smiled. The bonds that connected them from the night of the girl's birth until then had snapped with that sneer. Snatching the brush from Melda, she brought it down on her head and back several times until she fell to the floor at her mother's feet. Only then did Christine stop. She looked down at her daughter's body, uncaring and unfrightened. Recalling Foster's word about her gentleness, she let the brush drop to the floor. At 3 o'clock in the morning, Foster left his house like a thief. In his right hand was a paper bag in which Christine had put the afterbirth wrapped up in brown paper. After making sure there was no one in the street, he walked down to the coca and threw the bundle in the river. He then folded the bag and dropped it in the murky river as well. The water in Princess Street was lower than he had ever seen it. On arriving home, he realized that he was shivering. With trembling hands, he poured himself another shot of Exum rum and drowned it with one gulp.
In the aftermath, G molests the half demented Melda whenever Foster takes his daily escape to the barber shop. Foster is blind to this assault on his pride as a man. Melda, a victim of her parents' docility,
Cooped up in the house all day and every day, except for visits to church.
actually looks forward to G's predatory visits.
With an avidity bordering on hysteria.
Christine, too, falls prey to the trickster G. Trapped in a marriage with an older man, Christine is both angry and jealous of G's attentions to Melda, while Foster continues to delude himself that
He was lucky with his women.
Foster's most abysmal failure is perhaps with his idle son, Bird. Foster is in self denial about his role in Bird's dysfunctional adulthood. At Bird's homecoming party, Foster brashly associates himself with his son's success without questioning how Bird has come by such wealth.
Foster lost no opportunity to be by his side, so that guests would know that he was Bird's father.
Bird's illusion about his place in society as a wealthy man is challenged by his relationship with Stephanie. Bird announces glibly that he is buying a large house on residential Brickdam because
I could stand being poor no more.
Stephanie, a would be artist who believes in the work ethic and in the purposeful harnessing of human potential, exclaims,
A man should have a job, though. It is not natural to be on one long holiday.
Stephanie is, spiritually, poles apart from Bird, the hustler. With their clashing values, they are metaphors of a dichotomized society in transition. She feels betrayed by his obsession with the quick fix of easy wealth and attempts to discourage his materialistic instinct.
But what you want house for? If you get it, you're going to have to get clothes to go with it and furniture and a lot of useless things. Money only does bring trouble. My life not going to be worth living.
Bird's tale that a water maid is the source of his wealth only elicits disbelief in Stephanie.
I don't believe you and nobody nowadays. But you know what? Some people saying? They say you thief somebody money.
A skepticism shared by Foster.
He must get the money from somewhere. It don't grow up on trees.
In the face of a strong suggestion that Bird is a thief, the reader is asked to consider his claim of being in the mysterious grip of a water maid, which generates a crisis between Bird and Stephanie, for she and the water maid are now virtual rivals for the same man, whereas Bird wants to lose neither of them. In the event, Bird begins to reap the negative consequences of his feared relationship with the water maid.
It's not the same. People don't talk to me as they used to. When I go to other, they don't joke with me. They think I change. And all I want to do is live as I used to. You should have to move from the room in Broad Street then, Guy told him. What do you think I got money for? To live in a hellhole? Boras harshly. Well, it is up to you, ain't it? Guy remarked, showing little sympathy for his friend.
The loss of community is keenly felt by Bird. He is now seen as a social misfit. In a rare moment of self examination, Bird wonders whether he,
Could ever recover those tranquil days in the range yard in Broad Street, the noise, the devotion, and above all, the peace of mind.
and regain the community he had before he began his strange pursuit of wealth. At the dawn of independence in a former British colony, this loss of community is a symptom of the fragmentation of the society caused by the exodus, not only of the moneyed class, but also of the professional class, fearful that their freedoms could be curtailed under the native leadership that replaced the colonials. Bird is unable to anchor himself in the social flux, even with his newly found affluence. Myth has a mesmeric impact on the psyche of Heath's characters. As if driven to an inevitable fate exacted by the myth of the water maid, Burr takes his sister's children out in his shiny new car, which crashes on the East Bank public road, where they all meet tragic ends. The only survivor, Ada's godson, reports the fleeting appearance of a woman in the front seat of Bert's car. The terror of the myth persists.
Stephanie refused to believe the child's account, even though it was she herself who unclasped the gold necklace around her dead husband's neck. It was identical to the one she had taken from him while he was sleeping and thrown into the ocean.
The water maid is Bird's wish to escape the stagnant future that society offers. The tampering of this myth necessitates that he be destroyed. The water maid gets her revenge in mythical terms. The car crash in which Bird dies is somehow liberating for Stephanie, since it allows her to
Throw away everything and begin again.
that Stephanie is able to rescue Melda from the stagnant Foster household with its stale, cliched relationships, holds a promise that this new generation of women can work out a new life through art. G's several entanglements with the Foster family allude to an endemic psychic disturbance in the society. G plots his own way to wealth. The traditional trickster figure, Anansi, is the underdog in society who uses his wiles against the establishment to survive. G, though, is a perverted Anansi figure. His wiles are directed against his fellow underdogs. G routinely cheats Foster of the money that Foster receives from Bird. His ultimate aim is to rob Foster of the large amount kept in a bag for his old age, a provision Bird makes from his mysterious largesse. G hopes for a large house and a new car equal to Bird's new social success. G is a product of predatory and directionless society, his mind as crooked as the pillars of his range house. In his self loathing, he feels the need to cheat and humiliate others to compensate for his own embarrassingly stunted condition. The trickster figure is a recurrent motif in Heath's fictions, but characters like G are not simply narrative devices used against the middle class. Rather, they are metaphors of the degradation endemic in post colonial societies that are in urgent need of a new order of relationships. As G lures his prey, Foster, to his home for a lavish dinner in the hope of cheating him of his money, the thought that he has almost attained his goal makes him tremble with elation.
He was now on the threshold of a new life. He was about to burst the change that anchored him to the range yard, to a way of life his parents and grandparents had known as well. No man should live a lifetime in one room and keep his sanity, he thought. Even his reflections died there before he could put them together coherently. It was only when he was walking the streets that he could construct his dreams. The road was his domain, the family room a prison cell,
G, the predator,
the crooked timber of humanity.
does not count on the possibility of Christine's betrayal or on Foster's self awakening and uncharacteristic wrath. The novel asks whether individual freedom can be bought on the basis of old habits of opportunism and depravity, of man reduced to his baser instincts, or whether these can be transformed into a new awareness that will allow a community of valid persons to cohere. When Foster fails to appear at the bank to transfer the money, G becomes desperate.
Twisting and turning like an animal in a cage.
The naive Foster finally gains a modicum of self knowledge, waylays G, and savages him with a cutlass. In striking out against G's vagabondage, Foster strikes out against his own weakness and vulnerability. This moment of closure reveals Foster's relationship with G to be a liberating one. Too late, G comes to realize that his pursuit of wealth is flawed, and as he savors precious, almost poetic memories of the traditional and unchanging way of life in the community before he became consumed by greed, the reader shares G's pain when the hunter becomes the hunted, and he is forced to flee the town and separate from his wife to escape the wrath of the Fosters.
His mind began to cloud over with images of shadows and puddles as sleep overcame him. He would, after all, finish his days in the range yard where he was born, where he learned his childhood games and the games older people played as well. Here he had made his kites in April, fashioned his spinning tops from akari seeds, and competed with his round of glazed marbles in the games of his district. Looking on through his window at the goings on in the door steps or around the standpipe where the women gathered to wash and gossip. On dark nights, he would occasionally trip over a discarded tire, and in the rainy season, when the waters from the gutter spilled over into the yard, he would have to pick his way from stone to stone if the stepping planks had been moved by some thoughtless child.
Yet it is imperative that an end be put to G's depredatory habits. Despite the flaws in human nature and in human relationships, the dismantling of such cliched forms of human relationships as those depicted in this novel points to the possibility of renewal in a society on the threshold of a new beginning. Bird's self-destruction and G's self-exile free Foster, Stephanie, and Melda from the victim spaces and allow them to function as free individuals and reclaim their humanity, so that Christine's pessimism now seems a thing of the past.
After all these years, the Foster family didn't get no luck. There's always something knocking at the door. And when it come, it caused nothing but trouble.